Susie,
Rob,
so today you're going to tell us all about some giant Mesozoic octopuses, is that right?
yeah, in a break from our usual format, where I know you like me to talk about vertebrates papers, but I saw this paper and I just really wanted to do it. So I
Yeah,
decided that, and octopuses, they're a bit like vertebrates, aren't they? They've got big brains and big eyes, and they're clever and stuff,
and they taste good.
and they taste good. I've got actually, can I tell you about this one time, my octopus eating experience? So
Okay.
I was a student, right, and I was in Portugal on a collections visit, and we went out for lunch, and I thought octopus, maybe I'll have an octopus salad or something, and something, just a nice little bit sliced up. I was thinking like calamari, maybe some rings or something. Anyway, it came and it was basically a whole octopus legs, but they were like a foot and a half long, and they were purple, and they had all their suckers on. It was enormous. And the purple stuff, we started eating, we shared it, right? We started eating this. And the purple stuff was like this disgusting kind of slimy outer. It was disgusting. It was one of the most unpleasant experiences of my life. And basically, I think this is a lesson to us all that, we actually just probably shouldn't be eating octopus because they're quite smart, aren't they? I feel a bit guilty about that.
They are very clever, but I guess today though we're going to go back in time and look at a time when the octopuses might have been eating us rather than us eating the octopuses.
Yeah, I mean, the legs of this baby, I do not want to be having on my dinner plate.
No. So let's see how big they could get. Okay, so Susie, what have you been up to this week?
Oh, it's been the May bank holiday. I've basically been doing nothing, playing
Oh,
cricket.
lovely.
Same, same, same. How about you?
We've had lots of visitors coming through Manchester the last few weeks. We've had Ali Daly from Busan come to talk to us about arthropods. We've had your friend Imran Rahman come to talk to us about echinoderms, and we've had Robin Beck come to talk to us about mammals. We've been having lots of taxonomic evolutionary fun here in Manchester the last couple of weeks.
Well, that sounds exciting and intellectual. Ali is my friend too, by the way. We
Oh
were
yeah.
postdocs at the same time at the Natural History Museum. Yeah.
Oh,
So
good. So you know everybody first. You're friends with everybody. But no one can talk to us about mollusks though, which is what we're going to talk about today. So, what's the paper you've chosen for us this week, Susie?
okay, so we're going to talk about a paper called Earliest Octopuses Were Giant Top Predators in the Cretaceous Oceans. And this paper came out very recently. We are recording on the 5th of May, and it came out on the 23rd of April in Science. So this is a
Yep,
big deal.
big
It's
splash.
a big deal. Now, Rob, I want you to think back to
Yep.
last summer, pretty
hmm
pretty soon after we started recording the fossil files,
hmm
and I think it was August 2025, and we did a bonus episode called Squid exclamation mark all caps.
Yes.
Do you remember
Yes,
that episode?
I do.
Yeah, and in that episode we looked at another science paper in which the authors used a technique that they claimed was brand new, and it was called digital mining.
Spoiler
And
alert.
do you
It,
remember
it
that?
wasn't brand. It wasn't brand new. It
Well,
was 100 plus years old.
let's come to that. Let's come to that. Uh, but they use this digital mining to determine diversity patterns in squid through time.
Okay, but
Can you can you
just to point out that if you say a word on a podcast and put in the inverted commas with your fingers, it's audio. People can't see you doing
yeah,
that.
okay. So I was doing the
Quote
the
marks,
rabbit
digital
ears,
mining.
digital mining, closed rabbit ears. Um,
Okay.
can you remember our reaction to that paper, Rob? Just
We ran out of things to say about it because we thought it was really cheeky that they created a new technique that actually existed from over 100 years ago. That was my main
yes.
memory. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, I think we were surprised on a number of levels that the paper was published at all, really. I mean, I guess so they did this technique called digital mining, which we'll get into, but it appears to be the same as open rabbit ears, serial sectioning, closed
Yes.
rabbit ears, a
Yeah.
technique that has been around for hundreds of years, as long as paleontologists have been around, in fact, I
Yeah.
think. And they did some totally basic diversity analyses which didn't involve any sort of bias for, the fossil record or anything like that, in which they claimed get big things about squid evolution, and it got published in Science, one of the world's most foremost multidisciplinary science journals. And we were a bit perplexed, weren't we, at all of those
Well,
things.
but in their defense, it had some nice things in it. That was nice. They had lots of nice fossils, but I think maybe they'd exaggerated how novel what they were doing was. And it's the same
Yes.
team for this time round.
Well, that's the great news, Rob.
Yeah.
Digital mining is back. The team behind digital mining, they're back with more cutting edge science.
Okay, cutting edge.
Anyway,
Is that the
cutting
pun?
edge.
Because we
That's
didn't actually explain how this works. Is you cut. So just a refresh to anybody, you take the fossil and you grind it, take a picture, grind it, take a picture, grind it, take a picture. So the fossil gets destroyed, and you end up with all these images. And they've used some AI to construct it, but the old-fashioned technique is that you just do it with photographs on wax, and you'd make a nice wax model. The same thing's been going on for a long time. That was the point.
that was the point. And the curious thing is why not just CT scan it? Because then you don't have to destroy the fossil. But nobody
Mm.
knows. Nobody knows. Digital mining. Um, anyway, so the team that include Shin Ekagami and Yoshiro Iba um, from Hokkaido University, they're back with more uh, insights from digital mining. And it's fair to say that their claims this time are pretty incredible, are they not?
They are incredible.
Can we? I want to start with the abstract, Rob. I'm going to share my screen. We just need a brief musical interlude while I share my screen with you here.
Do, 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 do. See what you got. Okay, this is from the abstract. Asymmetric wear patterns further indicate lateralized behavior suggesting advanced intelligence. With a calculated total length of 7 to 19 meters, these octopuses may represent the largest invertebrates thus described, rivaling contemporaneous giant marine reptiles. Our findings show that powerful jaws and the loss of superficial skeletons convergently transformed the cephalopods and marine vertebrates into huge, intelligent predators. Big
Huge
claims.
intelligent
Big claims.
predators.
Yeah.
Big
Th-
claims.
I mean, this is big news, right? So I guess we should have hyped this up at the beginning, right? This is the sort of thing that gets people very excited about paleontology. Massive, super intelligent predators. This is what people want. This is what people want. Give the people what they want.
Give the people what they want. Massive, super intelligent predators, octopus predators in the
Mm.
Mesozoic.
Mm.
Okay, so let's get into it. Um, we can talk about how they've established these how massive they were, if indeed they were that massive, and how intelligent they were, if indeed they were that intelligent. So, do you know when octopuses evolved? Have you ever thought about when octopuses evolved, Rob?
Well, I have actually because that was a side story I want to talk about because there was another paper that came out recently that I was considering for fossil files about when octopuses turned up. How much of a detour do we want into octopuses turning up?
No, let's do it. I'm all for
Okay.
more octopus content
So
here.
the first fossil octopus was thought to be from the Mazon Creek, which is in the Carboniferous of Illinois, this thing called Polsepia. But that was always weird because it was one specimen and it was 150 million years before any other octopus turns up. So octopuses are part of the cephalopods. However, a paper came out from Thomas Clements and friends recently in paleontology where they did you know what we talked about the episode with Jane and I did that, micro CT scanning, the looking at the chemistry to look at the hidden taphonomy of the fossils. But we did that with the vertebrates. They did the same sort of thing with this octopus, and they found inside it these tiny radula. Turns out it was a nautiloid all along, a sort of a
Huh.
nautiloid that's been very rotten. So that just means that 150 years of octopus evolution just got wiped off the map, and
Mm.
actually is far more sensible with what we might expect it to be. So that was kind of fun. Anyway, you asked a simple question: when did octopuses evolve? Not that early is the point. So more like Mesozoic times, I guess, is when octopuses are getting going.
Yeah, apparently they really kind of radiated at the end Triassic after the end Triassic mass
Yeah,
extinction. So they're primarily Mesozoic, right?
yeah,
And of course to today. And apparently they followed an exceptional evolutionary pathway among invertebrates, by which the authors mean that they demineralized their shell. So as you say, they're evolved from cephalopods, and of course cephalopods
yeah,
are things like ammonites and
yeah.
nautiloids.
That's happened loads in
That's happened
invertebrates.
loads. So
And
not that exceptional.
gastropods do it all the time.
Oh
They
yeah,
just lose their
slugs.
shells. See, yeah, nudibranchs, slugs, loads of things lose their shell quite repeatedly.
Okay, so they followed a totally average uh, evolutionary pathway
Yeah.
for invertebrates.
Well, it makes
Um,
sense. Building a shell is expensive, right? Going to the effort of synthesizing all that mineral. If you can live without it, get rid of it.
my mind is now working around giant slugs and nudibranchs and giant intelligent slugs and nudibranchs. I think we're going to come back to this point about demineralizing skeletons because this
Okay.
they claim is that it's a key innovation. This loss of an external skeleton is a key innovation that allowed them to improve their swimming abilities, eyesight, and intelligence. Obviously, didn't work for nudibranchs and slugs, but I guess who knows? Maybe slugs are
Okay.
more intelligent than I thought.
Okay.
They do destroy my garden regularly. So,
Uh,
right.
a slug outwits you doesn't necessarily mean it's very intelligent, I guess.
Hey,
Sorry, I couldn't resist. It was you, the one that was making the point about the slugs eating your. Cabbages.
I'll toss them up and you can whap them down.
Okay.
Right. So anyway, back to the fossil record of octopuses. So apparently in the fossil record of octopuses, there are some biggies. Some of them have been up
Yes.
to 2 meters long.
Mhm.
And this is actually because, of course, octopuses are primarily soft-bodied. We don't have a very good fossil record of them, as you alluded to in the story about the Carboniferous non-octopus. So,
Mhm.
but they've got these jaw apparatus, which are chitinous, so they are
Mhm.
apparently much more likely to fossilize. Um, and so these big 2 meter long octopuses have been suggested to be kind of, high level carnivores. But because they've never found any stomach contents, they don't know much about them, they haven't really ever been able to figure out where they sit in the food chain or, what the implications of these big octopus jaws might be. So in this paper, they look at some octopus jaws and particularly where on the jaws of octopuses to examine what they're eating. And apparently, this works because where you see like a series of scratches and pits and things
Mhm.
like this
Mhm.
on uh, the jaw apparatus, you can see this in modern Durophagus cephalopod jaws. So Durophagus means like crushing or eating hard things, right? So apparently this exists on other things. Now, they focus on two main specimens in this study. They also looked at some others, but really this study kind of reports these two main fossils, which are the two biggest ones that they found. And these two represent two different species of the genus Nana Emotutis, which I will only be saying once during the course of this podcast. Um,
Hang on, I need to have a turn at this. Let's have a look.
nan, nan, Nanaemo
Naniemo, yeah, Naniemoteuthis. Teuthis,
Nanaemoteuthis.
teuthis.
Teuthis.
Yeah.
Teuthis. Yeah.
So they're
Okay.
big. They've got
Anyway,
these big beaks, big fossil beaks from
and we'll
octopus.
just be calling that, does actually the genus doesn't matter. Big octopus from a
Yeah.
genus, two
Yeah.
different species. Now, one of
Yeah.
these is actually a museum specimen. The big one's a museum specimen that was in a museum already. So
Mhm.
it's only one of them is they've actually identified through this new technique of open bunny ears, digital
It's
mining.
not new
Okay,
technique. Stop saying new technique. It's not new
sorry.
technique. Okay.
So they did a nice video. Did you see the nice video in the
It was
supplementary
nice. Yeah,
data?
I liked the
Yeah,
video.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But it was definitely serial sectioning. So what they did, as Rob said earlier, was they basically ground up a fossil, took photos of each surface, and then made a 3D model using AI, which makes me wonder, though, AI, Rob, because they had to do
Mhm.
this in AI, with AI. Now, we know that when you use AI, you have to have a lot of training data.
Yes.
So how many fossils did they have to grind up to get the training data for the AI to identify octopus jaws out of it?
Well, taking my mind back to our episode where we talked about artificial intelligence in paleontology, I think you can, for CT scanning, you can train it on some slices and then let it go on for the rest of the slices. So I guess it might be you don't have to necessarily have a massive model. You can just do it for a subset of the model you're looking at. But a lot of these specimens come from the same place in Japan, right? So I guess once you've got one working model, you can do it repeatedly. I'm
You
not
could
sure
do
you
it
have to
visually.
grind up loads into death to make it work, but
Well, I don't know. I think if you're looking at AI, I mean, the data sets that I know some of my colleagues are working with, you're looking at maybe 80% of the data needs to be the training data and only 20%,
hmm hmm
when you're first setting up these kind of models, right? So anyway, I guess my question is why not just manually segment the jaws? I mean, I don't know. I mean, they don't specify how many modules they had to go to, how many chunks they had to go through. But it
Mm.
seems that, by the time you've gone to the effort of like, building a whole machine learning algorithm to segment, you might as well just segment them yourself. And anyway, why not just CT scan it? I think that.
So just to explain some context here, this is about the process by if you scan or serial grind your specimen, you end up with all these slices, and getting them to make a nice 3D model can take quite a lot of time to process the images to make, to figure out what's fossil and what's not fossil. Often that's done by humans, but you can get AI to do it as well.
But does it though, Rob? Does it actually take that long when you're just looking at some octopus jaws, which is just basically one lump? I mean, it's not a freaking mammal skull, is it? I don't know. Just it's not that hard.
I
Seems a
guess it
bit
is a fair.
overkill.
It's. We should maybe describe what these things look like. They're fairly morphologically simple, right? It just looks sort of like a paper clip, but not a paper clip, a bulldog clip in some senses. It's a sort of one big, smooth, hooked object.
It's like
How
a
big is
hooked
it?
object with two sides.
So these
Well,
giant hooks, how big are they?
this scale bar is 2 centimeters, so that's going to be, I don't know, that one's going to be 5 centimeters across. So
Yeah.
that's the really biggest one they found, which is the museum specimen. But the one that they digitally segmented is actually about 2.5 centimeters across, 3 centimeters across.
Okay. One other thing I've just noticed that people are going to be asking us, I'm sure I'm trying to save us some comments here. We've been using the word octopuses repeatedly. That's because that's the correct way to
It's
pluralize
not
octopuses.
octopi.
Octopi is not correct. It is not a
No,
Latin word. Latin words some can get uh, pluralized with eyes sometimes, but it's a Greek word. So you could call it octopodes if you want, or octopuses, but not octopi.
no.
Sorry,
Thank you
as
for
you were.
clarifying that, Rob. You massive pedant. Anyway, um,
Hey, I'm telling you, you're right. I'm anticipating that people will be listening to this going, "Why are you saying octopi?" I'm backing you up here.
thanks.
You were telling us about these fossil beaks and the reconstruction. Sorry,
Yeah, okay.
Susan.
So let's just park the method, I think there. Anyway, they got, they used this AI for whatever reason we think, whether or not we think it was worth it, they did. And they ground up these fossils to get these fossils to get these digital, well, this one kind of digital jaw.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, they've got these two, which are the two big ones, and actually the one that they got through digital grinding is the smaller one. But both of these specimens, both the one through digital grinding, because they did it, they were able to segment it quite high resolution, that they can see these striations and these wear patterns on them. So they've got a series of scratches on them, and they're worn around the cutting edge. So that was presumably where the octopus was doing its biting stuff.
Hmm.
And the authors go to some length in documenting these scratches. And of course, this is very commonly used in vertebrates, isn't it, to investigate feeding behavior. But
Hmm.
there are a few problems with this method in vertebrates. Now,
Hmm.
um, I guess the most obvious one that people always talk about, so this is quite commonly done with mammals and reptiles, is that the scratches only record the animal's last meal.
Hmm.
So we know that, these wear patterns um, are imposed on the teeth very regularly, or the jaw apparatus quite very regularly. So they only record the last meal. And, given that the animal died presumably pretty shortly after eating its last meal, it's not always clear that the last meal might have been typical for what the animal was eating. So you always have
Hmm.
to kind of bear that in mind when you're looking at microwear on teeth. But there are other issues. So this is well validated as a method, dental microwear on mammals. So you can go to mammal teeth and you can say there's a series of scratches and pits, and you can compare it with modern mammal teeth and say, if I see a modern mammal tooth with these scratches and pits, what is it that they're eating? And we're pretty happy that this works okay with mammals. But it's not totally clear that this works for everything. Although the mammal literature has been extended to reptiles and people do it on dinosaurs all the time, um, in some cases, some studies have found that it really doesn't work at all.
Hmm.
So it's not totally foolproof. So I think there's a question on this: is what do these scratches and pits actually mean? Now, the authors do say, as I mentioned earlier, that similar scratches and pits are seen on Durophagus cephalopods today. So the authors interpret them as indications that Cretaceous octopuses were Durophagus. Okay, fine. But I do wonder whether there's anything else that could have caused similar scratches and pits, and the authors don't really cover this at all. So I wondered whether these could be some sort of tool marks, by which I mean not from preparation, but from being dragged along the seafloor or
Hmm. Hmm.
transported. We see this sort of thing on rocks, right? You
Hmm.
can get transport of these things. I mean, clearly, the deposits that these are found in, we're not finding deposits where the octopus died, was buried
Hmm.
immediately and fossilized. We're seeing these things are being transported a long time. Could they be something due to acid preparation in this acid
Hmm.
digestion in the stomach of a vertebrate? I
Hmm.
mean, I don't. The authors don't explain why these marks are absolutely 100% where, I
No,
think.
that slightly frustrated me a little bit. I mean, although I guess it's not really the central part of what they're saying, but they're saying a lot of different things. But the level of sophistication for these techniques, mostly with mammals, is high, right? There's a lot of people that can quantify these, map them, validate them, as you said.
With
And these
mammals.
guys with mammals, but with these guys, they've just drawn on some lines and said, here are some scratches, which to me is like, okay, yeah, there's scratches. But, that would also be expected. I think the important point I wanted to raise was the same one that you've raised there, which was if this octopus had been eaten by a mosasaur or a plesiosaur, I might expect there to be some messing about. And indeed, giant squid do get eaten by whales. Anyway,
Indeed, indeed.
indeed. So
So I don't know. I mean, it doesn't
yeah,
seem like really well validated to me,
no,
these scratches and pits. But as you
but
say, I'm not sure. well, I don't really know what the central point of this story is, but maybe we'll get to that. But anyway, that they're saying, well, these octopuses that are eating hard things. Okay,
I think the
sure,
central point is size, I guess. Presumably that's where we're going next.
yeah. Although they do spend most of the paper talking about wear, tooth wear. But anyway,
Yeah.
so we'll come on to the body size. So these are big jaws. It is true.
Yes.
The museum specimen, as I said, is larger than the jaw. Oh, it's actually it's larger than the smaller one, but it's larger than the jaw of a giant squid, which is the
Hmm.
largest cephalopod alive today,
Hmm.
which is about 12 meters in length.
Hmm.
However, of course, squids and octopuses have different body proportions. So
Hmm.
apparently today, octopuses fall into two groups. You've got your long-bodied forms and your short-bodied forms. And based on kind of soft body imprint fossils and molecular phylogeny, the long-bodied forms are thought to have been ancestral to the short-bodied forms, apparently. So the authors are therefore inferring that the octopuses, these early octopuses, which I should say are from the Cretaceous, I don't think we said that, that because they're from the Cretaceous, they're quite early, and therefore they must be long-bodied forms because they're
Was that the
they're not.
rationale? I missed that. I thought they were
Yeah,
saying that it had some morphology that meant it was
I don't think so.
that.
I think there was something about the ratio of the sides of the hook, maybe to the hookiness of the hook, which
Yeah.
also supported this long-bodied form. But essentially, I think it's just basically that they're primitive. I mean, they're not putting a phylogeny or anything, but I guess you can't really do a phylogeny of octopus hooks, can you?
Well, we don't need a phylogeny. We just need some taxonomy. What we need is some justification about why we think it's this particular thing. There's not really any chat about the anatomy, about why they think this particular beak is an octopus, why they think it's a particular type of octopus. They just say it's a serrata. Let's move on.
It says in their jaw morphology, broad wings are characteristic of long-bodied forms, whereas the wings of short-bodied forms are narrow. And this genus, the one we can't pronounce, has broad wings, and therefore it is assigned to the long-bodied group.
Is that
So
enough?
yeah,
Is that enough? I
I don't
don't
know.
know.
I mean, I don't know anything about octopus
Let's
taxonomy,
not get
but
bogged down with octopus
taxonomy.
taxonomy. Although I guess this is going to be relevant, right? Because this
Well,
is going to be
it's
the central
actually
size.
absolutely
Yeah,
critical to the body size argument. But
yeah.
there are bigger problems, though. I think probably bigger
Let's
problems.
get on with the bigger problems.
Let's go. So let's zoom through to figure four, Rob, if we
Ugh.
can. Ugh, oh dear. Okay, oh, Rob loves this figure. Like, right, Rob, tell me what we're looking at here.
Okay, so we've got it's a very attractive looking figure, but it's really low on actual data and information, so that annoys me. So we've got a range of some body reconstructions for our Toothis, I'm going to call it, mosasaurs, and various different petty looking fish and sharks. They are given some body size estimates, and we've got a mantle length estimate against a hood length estimate. Basically, they're trying to do what you want to do, right? We've only got fossil beaks. We don't have fossil bodies for these things. And they're trying to estimate the size, how big would the body of this octopus have been given the beak? And they use that by looking at modern groups and extrapolating. So they're looking at modern group beaks and then looking at their lengths and then trying to extrapolate them up. But of course, this is tricky because, first of all, extrapolations don't always work in a nice linear way, right? They suggest they do, but often they don't. If you look at a beak size and a body size and a smaller thing, and then look at it, imagine what it would have been like if it just continued growing, maybe it wouldn't be the same linear relationship. And furthermore, what annoys me is that they haven't got any of the raw data on this. They've just got on the lines of best fit and reconstructions, which
Yeah,
is
so what
bad academic form. I want to see the actual data underneath.
exactly? And I think here, so we've got hood length, which is, I guess, the jaw length along the x-axis, and we've got mantle length. So the mantle length is the bit like the head of the octopus that doesn't have the legs, the
Hmm.
tentacles. And they've plotted this for different species of octopus, and they're basically showing, aren't they, that they grow allometrically, as
Hmm.
in, as you would expect, as the hood length, as the hood gets bigger within a species, the body gets bigger. However, that relationship is different in all the different species of
Yes.
long-bodied octopus. So
Yes.
what they're showing is that there is no consistent relationship across different
Hmm.
species
Hmm.
of mantle length versus hood length. Except that the only consistency is that the bigger the animal, the bigger its hood. But there's no clear straight line relationship among long-bodied octopuses, and all of the different
Hmm.
species that they've plotted here have different relationships. And then, of course, what they've done then is what every good scientist does, and they've just shoved theirs in to and read this off. So they've gone, okay,
Hmm.
well, we've got a hood length of 8.7 millimeters or something. sorry, no, 8.7 centimeters, 80 millimeters. And the error bar that they've put on the mantle length is therefore the smallest mantle length that they could get from a living octopus, and the largest mantle length that they could get from a living octopus. Now, that is quite different, isn't it? There's quite a big range. So
Hmm.
that range would give you a mantle length of anywhere between, reading off the graph, about 1.5. Oh, the mantle length hasn't even got, oh no, 1.5 meters hasn't. I was going to say it didn't have units, but then I spotted the units. 1.5 meters, right the way through to about 4.2 meters, 4.25
Hmm.
meters, demonstrating the range that of living octopuses and their different body sizes
Hmm.
for the same beak length. So that gives us an absolutely monster error bar of, plus or minus 3 meters in
Well,
size for the
indeed.
mantle
And,
length.
and and that's just the first part. That's just to estimate the
Right.
mantle length, which isn't
That's
even
just mantle
estimating
length.
that. That's just then you got to estimate on the tentacle length to get the bodies, and tentacles can vary loads. Or am I using the right word when I say tentacles? Thomas
Yeah,
Clements
well, I
gets
don't know,
annoyed if
but
you use the
yes,
wrong.
that's the thing that
Yeah,
we all understand. I mean, I think
yeah.
there's one other point to make here, that actually that this graph is based on the hood length, is based on living animals in which the hood is complete, whereas in our fossil specimens the edges are worn off. And so what they've done is that they've
Mm, mm,
reconstructed the missing
yes,
bit. So
yes.
some of it is reconstructed. Okay. So some of this length, this hood length for both their specimens is reconstructed.
Yeah.
So not only have they got monster error bars, they've also made a guess about the
Hmm.
actual original shape of the beak and then
Hmm.
measured the guess.
Hmm.
Okay. And then come up with, something, they've reconstructed it to be 10% larger than it's actually preserved in both the
Yeah.
fossils.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think when you put it like that, I think it's worth seeing how the errors can compound on top of the errors. So let's go through them sequentially, shall we? They've got this fossil. They've
Yeah.
they say the front of it's incomplete. They estimate how long it would have been because it says the tip of it's worn off. Guess number one. Then they've done some guesstimates looking at, okay, given the relationship from living groups, we can assume that, given this beak size, how big would the mantle be? We'll estimate. It varies massively within them. And we're assuming it's linear, which it might not be linear. Why would we think it would be linear? Then we've got the mantle lengths. Then we've got the arms. They're not tentacles, they're arms. So we've got
And
error bar on
then
error bar on error bar.
And this is based on the total assumption that this is a long-bodied octopus. Because if it's a short-bodied octopus, it's
Yes,
going to have a
yeah,
totally different
yes,
mantle
yes,
length.
yes, yes, yeah, 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 yes. But
Okay.
we end up with this. I guess we haven't actually talked about the
Well,
headline. The
let,
headline
let me
is
let me finish. Let me finish. Let me
go ahead.
finish.
Sorry. Go
Okay.
ahead, go ahead.
So apparently, in long-bodied forms, the length of the octopus, including the arms, their arms, not tentacles, apparently,
Yes.
arms in this paper, is on average, 4.2 times the mantle length. So, I mean,
Psst,
this is a bit
psst,
vague. On
boo,
average, on average. Now,
boo.
this means that they reconstruct the mantle of the smaller two, the digitally mined one, as between 0.67 and 1.84 meters. To be fair, given the errors, wouldn't you just have rounded up? 0.67 seems a
Plus or
bit
minus a few millimeters, yeah.
it's a bit accurate, isn't it? But anyway,
Yeah.
while the larger the museum specimen is between 1.58 and 4.43 meters, and then you multiply these mantle lengths by the average arm length, and you get a total body length of the smaller one between 2.8 to 7.7 meters, and the bigger one 6.6 to 18.6 meters. It's quite a big error bar. It's quite a big
Yeah.
difference, isn't it? A six
Yeah.
meter animal to an eight. I mean, it's 3 times the size.
Yes. But
Okay.
that's the headline, isn't it? So it's either the smallest size estimate based on their, well, estimates on estimates on estimates, 7 meters. Let's round it up and say 7 meters or 19 meters. So that's the range they're coming up with.
I mean,
I'm
if
tired.
we
I'm
there comes a
tired.
point, well, there comes a point in paleobiology, right, where you actually have to say that the error bars are just too large to say anything meaningful about the ecology of an organism.
Right.
And I would say this is this time, right?
Well,
I mean, the error bars are just, they're so large. And
yeah.
I did you used to say the ref? Our Rob will be intimately familiar with the ref. Our non-British university academic listeners will not be so familiar with the ref. But the ref is a way that you can correct me in this because I don't have to go through it. But basically, the government assigns money to universities based on the impact of their research. And we used to, when I worked in universities, we used to have to go through kind of exercises where we'd establish, we'd read papers and say how what they were going to score on the ref, whether they would get a score between kind of 1 star, which is kind of very sort of low impact research, and 4 star, which is absolutely internationally cutting edge. And one of the things that I remember one of the panel members who'd been on the previous ref told me was what he would do to flip through a paper and see quickly, is this rigorous, and assess rigorousness, was to look at the graphs and see whether there were error bars on the graphs. And this is a
Mm,
science paper, right? This is a science paper that has no error bars and no discussion of error. And it is making some absolutely, literally monster claims, right?
mm,
And I just think it's absolute nonsense. I mean, you know, they claim that the headline of this is that they claim that the squid, the octopus, the largest octopus, could have been the largest of all organisms that ever lived in the Cretaceous oceans.
mm.
Or it could be half the size of a giant squid, Rob. But let's not let the science get in the way of a good story, right?
Well, yes. So yeah, I didn't. That's a really interesting point about the error bars, and that your entire paper could be boiled down to whether or not you've presented your data honestly, which it's fairly safe to say that they've presented the glossiest version of the data you can. And you're faced with that choice of saying, okay, we've got 3 times the size estimates. Which direction should we go into? Shall we say, well, there's big error bars, we don't know, or should we go into some mad speculation about the ecology? They chose path number 2 here. So
They certainly did. I mean, I think once again, I am absolutely gobsmacked that this has been published in Science. I mean, Science is one of the, I just had a paper rejected from Science, and it was way, way more rigorous. Like,
is
what
that where
what
some
is
of this
going on
spikiness
here?
is coming from? Is it
I
actually
don't
that
know,
your
but
butt hurt?
what possibly, but what I really want to know is what is it that these guys have on the editor of Science? Because it must be it must
No,
be
no,
enormous.
we know what it is. It's a large headline grabbing claim. It's exciting, right? This is it. People love this sort of thing about paleontology, right? Giant, massive, super intelligent predators is an interesting idea, right? That maybe the top predator wasn't mosasaurs and plesiosaurs. Maybe it was a giant octopus. That's fun. That's people like it.
Yeah, but it's not founded in any science. It's just completely made up. It's just complete speculation.
Well, let's not say completely made up. Let's say they've inferred more than I would be comfortable with given the data available.
Yeah, okay. I'll agree with that. Um, yeah. I mean, they sort of then, they then, as you have said, they go on and make this next claim, which is that there's this sort of convergent evolution between vertebrates
Mm,
and octopuses, in
mm,
which they both reduced external skeletons,
mm.
and that allowed them to evolve extra large body size, and then intelligence and swimming abilities. And this allowed both the vertebrates, things like mosasaurs and plesiosaurs, and these giant octopuses to become the top predators of the Cretaceous oceans.
Yes, but both of those are plucked completely out of the air.
Completely out of the air. And as you mentioned earlier, the loss of external skeletons for invertebrates actually isn't that uncommon.
Mm,
And lots of things have done it and didn't
hmm
evolve giant body size and hyper intelligence. Um,
Can,
so
can I talk
yeah,
about fish for a minute here? Is this the right time to talk? Because they start now laying out that these guys are the largest predators, the largest animals in the Cretaceous seas. This annoys me because now they start talking about fish, and almost everything they say about fish is wrong. So, they say that in this sexy diagram, they're pointing out that it's bigger than a mosasaur, and they say that the biggest mosasaur are about 17 meters. I'm not really a mosasaur expert, but these mosasaurs they get pretty big, right?
can I just
They
say,
get
Rob, I
yeah.
don't think this is a very sexy diagram. Do you know one of my biggest bugbears as an editor and a reviewer is
Mhm.
text on figures that is too small to read.
Yes.
It's,
Oh,
can't
right,
read
yeah.
these words. What font size have they used? Anyway, carry on.
Do you need your glasses, Grandma? Is that what's going on?
I need to zoom in.
You need to zoom in. Don't make you zoom. Don't make me press more buttons.
Don't
Okay, so
make me
they
zoom.
start talking about how this particular new octopus rivals the dimensions of the largest bony fish, Zippercan Zippertactinus, but that's not the largest bony fish. They say the largest bony fish is 10 meters. Lee is massive and it's much bigger than
Yeah,
that.
but it wasn't
So
around in the Cretaceous though. So I guess they're talking about the Cretaceous oceans, aren't they? That
Are
the
they? Or
Lizictes is
they?
Jurassic. They
They're just
might
saying
have
the
said
largest ever.
Mesozoic. Oh yeah, well that is just wrong then, isn't it? Go on.
Well, hang on, let me just double check the wording. But that also, was the largest bony fish? No, it doesn't say in the
Defines this.
Cretaceous. It just talks about forever.
Well, then they're talking rubbish. Yes, you are right. Because
Oh no, it
Lizictes was
does
bigger.
say known from the Cretaceous. All right, maybe they are talking about Cretaceous things. Oh, does that really make a difference, though? I mean, we're talking about when these things achieve large body size. Maybe it does. Anyway, so Leedichthyes is massive, and it's a filter feeder, right? That's the other thing we haven't talked
Yeah.
about. Most of the large things, like whales and Leedichthyes, are filter feeding things, because being massive, if you're a filter feeder, manta rays also get massive. They're filter feeders. Being a filter feeder, being massive is the important thing to do here. Now, no one's suggesting that this thing's a filter feeder, because octopuses with the beaks like this aren't going to be doing that sort of thing, but but that's where we start going into this massive size. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to be a top predator. There are other ways to be doing that. But
I guess.
the other thing that's wrong here. Oh, sorry, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, maybe that's why they spend so long talking about wears and pits and scratches to suggest that this
Hmm.
is Durophagus. But I think that there's errors and concerns and lack of validation around that as well.
But they also say that vertebrates and cephalopods evolved their jaws at the same time, between 423 million years to 407 million years. That's just wrong. That's not true. Uh,
Really?
yeah, yeah.
What is
Jawed,
true?
this earlier. Jawed vertebrates started out much earlier than that, 440 million years ago at the beginning of the Silurian. Now, in their defense, that paper came out, I don't know, actually, it was 2, 3 years ago, so they should have caught up by now. Um, yeah, so jawed vertebrates were going earlier than this estimate here. So the things about fish, I'm not entirely sure I'm accurate, although I may withdraw my comment about the largest bony fish. Maybe they mean the largest bony fish in the Cretaceous, which I'm now going to have to go and look up. Anyway, the point is, it's a massive error bar. Anyway, so their most generous size estimation of their biggest possible estimate for this, which is an estimate on top of an estimate, is only a little bit bigger than the most massive mosasaur. So anyway, let's let's go on to the other thing, the intelligence. What do we think of this claim about them being hyper intelligent?
I don't know where it comes from. Just pops out of nowhere, doesn't it? I mean, they haven't got any evidence for this, have they?
Well, you're forgetting the super
Oh, the
intelligent
lateralized
kraken.
behavior.
No, no, you're forgetting the kraken we talked about a few weeks ago with the kraken that was arranging the ichthyosaur vertebrae
Oh,
into art.
yes.
Come on. The McMenamin theory or wherever it was, yeah. So obviously they're super intelligent because they were making art. No, they weren't. That's bullshit. Check that out from a previous episode. But they're talking about the lateralization. So they're saying that the wear is on one side rather than the other, and they're saying that that is an evidence of hyper intelligent behavior. Now, I'm not entirely convinced by that. How do we feel about that?
Well, it could, you know what it could also be due to? It could also be due to poor preservation of a fossil that's been lying on the seabed for,
Yes,
buried for 78 million years, probably. But
yes.
yeah, I think this is a big leap. And also they just say it. They just say
Mhm,
asymmetric loss of the jaw edges suggests lateralized behavior, which has been linked to a highly developed brain and cognition, reference
mhm,
42. So they provide one
mhm.
reference for this. I'd like to know more about this, and what it's based on. And I'm going to go so far as to say that I didn't look up that reference, but I mean, I don't know. We could do with more validation.
Yeah, I think so. I guess we've moved into the speculation part now. I mean, we
Yeah,
welcome speculation, I guess, but
it
were
has its
so I
place,
guess
but
we've got this hypermassive shell crushing, bone crushing, finned octopus swimming around in the Jurassic seas that was also very, very clever. That's the conclusion, right? But do we believe that?
no. Well,
No, you didn't even hesitate, just straight in. No.
I mean, I think the thing is that um, they've got some big fossil octopus jaws, and that they suggest that these big jaws suggest that there were bigger octopuses around then than there were today.
Mhm,
Um, and there was lots of bigger things around then than there were today. So maybe we should expect there to have been bigger octopuses. There were bigger all sorts of things. What I don't think that we can do with any sort of rigorousness whatsoever is to say how big they were. And I'm a little bit dubious that we can say what they were eating. So I think the idea that or that they were especially intelligent, or more intelligent, less intelligent than today's. I don't know. I
mhm,
mean, I think relative intelligence and even the meaning of intelligence is incredibly difficult to establish,
mhm.
isn't it? In So I think that this is totally spurious.
So the main finding boils down to the fact that they have one
One big
uh,
jaw.
jaw, which is 8 centimeters roughly, depending on how much
You
extrapolation you make of
reconstruct.
what's worn off. So there's an 8 centimeter fossil octopus jaw from the Cretaceous.
Yeah.
That's the incontrovertible bit and piece of information. Now, what you do with that on top of that, we should let our listeners decide. If you've got an 8 centimeter single jaw from the Cretaceous and it looks like an octopus, what are you going to do with that piece of information?
Publish it in Cretaceous research. Not submitted to science and claim you've got a giant
You've
invertebrate.
just slammed about 16,000 people in one fell swoop. Oh dear. Okay. So Susie's approach might have been different, but hey, surely you want to take a punt and get yourself a science paper here.
I'm just going to stop talking. I think I've said what I have to say, Rob.
Well, let's try and put some positiveness on this Japanese team. They have some nice few specimens. They
Yeah,
have looked at the nice wear marks on it, which, that's real, that's a thing, probably, although with the caveat that lots of different phenomena can lead to scratch marks on things. And it is bigger than anything else that we've had before. So those are all things that are true.
I mean, I think a thing that is true is that we have to try to work with fossil record that we have.
Yeah.
And in the case of, soft-bodied animals, you have to work with the bits that you've got. And I think, you have to try and get as much data as you can out of that. I would emphasize the word data, but, that's okay.
Well, here's another way of looking at it. I'm not sure this works. They've raised some testable hypotheses here. Right? Those hypotheses are testable. We can now potentially go and find some more fossils and estimate the behavior and ecological interactions that were taking place in the Cretaceous oceans.
That's true.
Although now that I'm just looking at the headline again, it says earliest octopuses were giant top predators in Cretaceous oceans. That is the headline. That is a very specific
It's a statement,
claim.
isn't it? It's a statement.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I
Hmm.
think we should probably just park this. Move on.
Hey, well, I enjoyed you suggesting this paper. It gave us lots to think about. So maybe you should do invertebrates more often. This is your first time suggesting an invertebrate paper, and it's been quite the eye-opener.
Hasn't it?
All right, well, thank you, Susie. Uh, well, I haven't asked you if what you think the take-home messages are.
Oh, I just don't think there's any take-home messages from this. I
Come
just,
on, try. I can
okay,
squeeze a
well,
take-home message out of you.
uh, I do think there's a take-home message about, no, I think what I said before, really, about, the difficulties of working with soft-bodied animals and trying to, collect as much and not overlook um, seemingly insignificant fossils
Hmm.
and seemingly, challenging deposits to work with to try to get data on difficult soft-bodied specimens.
Also, put error bars on your graphs.
Also, put error bars in your graphs.
Yeah, that's a good take-home message that I would
Validate your findings,
validate your findings.
that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they presented their raw data from modern octopuses, so maybe I could go and make a graph how I would like it to be. I'll just add that to my list of things to do in the meantime of like, here's what your graph should look like. That's very arrogant of me to suggest that, but look, I could, I like my graphs. The students were laughing at me about that when we were in Spain for the field trip. I was like, "Oh, well, I love looking at your graphs." Like, what's wrong with you? No, I love a good graph. I'm up for that. Anyway, that's off topic. Thank you, Susie, for bringing this paper to our attention, and it's given me a lot to think about and things to get angry about, and also enjoy.
See you next time, Rob.
See ya. Bye.
The Fossil Files was created by Robert Sansom and Susanna Maidman.
Fossil Files is a labour of love created in our spare time with no budget, so we really welcome any support you can provide us via our Patreon.
There you can access bonus content and join in the discussion by posting your own questions or even participate in live episodes.
In either case, we want to hear what you think. You can let us know what you thought about the topics we discussed or make suggestions for future papers in our social media channels.
You can find links to our Blue Sky, Instagram, and YouTube channels on our website, fossils.libsyn.com.